Having the
Here at UrbanArias, we pride ourselves on timely and relevant offerings. That's why.
Hi, I'm Ann Carolyn Bird, the Executive Director of UrbanArias, and welcome to our third installment of UrbanArias Sampled, our interview series that is taking you, our audience and our patrons, behind the scenes for a little closer look of how we make this art that right now is coming to you online, and soon is going to be back on our stages. We can't wait. I'm so excited tonight to be interviewing our filmmakers, Camry and Dubois Akin. They wear so many hats, and we were just talking. I've only gotten little snippets of each of their stories and their backgrounds and their multifaceted careers. So I'm excited personally to get a little one-on-one time with them.
So Dubois Akin, originally from Albany, Georgia. We both are, but I'll tell my story. Originally from Albany, Georgia, born and raised there. I went off to university at Florida State University, where I started training as a dancer at 19. Prior to that, I was in music and so I got my BFA there in dance. Like I mentioned, I started training as a formal dance training at 19. Prior to that, I was in music and kind of theater mostly. I went off to graduate school in New York through FSU, got drafted into a contemporary dance company, officially moved to New York kind of 6 months after that, and never left.
A lot of my life, like all of my life, has always been healthcare. And then also I started my everything science life in middle school when I got drafted for this scholarship. So everything since then was just like science, everything. STEM, science, technology, engineering, music. But now they're doing this thing where they're calling it STEAM. So they're adding arts in there. So, but yeah.
I've been so glad to see that. As an arts, I'd say we are an arts family that loves science and math. And so we love seeing the arts being included in STEM finally. But it sounds like yours was the opposite. You were a science family that I assume loved the arts.
Yeah, well, we're a science family that own businesses. Like, I think so that's where the Akin brand came in. Like I always felt like I knew that we would own our own business, but just all of the skills and the hard work behind it definitely came from my family being such pioneers in that way in business in general. So everything was science up until I moved to New York, and I have a passion for fashion. So that's when I kind of dropped science altogether like 5 years ago and went cold turkey into the fashion industry. And so that's kind of how the birthing of Akin brand actually started, was through fashion blogging, and then slowly like things trickled in.
Eventually what it became was we started getting contracts and work that was well above our infrastructure. So we kind of put everything on a hiatus, came back to the drawing board and talked about how do we fortify what we've built. And then that's when we started to really understand like, oh, we're operating in these dual spaces of an agency and a production company. And eventually, after about a year, after about a year of developing, we rebranded Akin brand as a modern creative agency and production company, primarily working in film, fashion, and dance. And ever since then, we just that is our niche, and that's how we work, and that's what we do. And so we've grown from there.
I am afraid as they discuss taking me.
Yeah, so Charlie Parker Yardbird was the first opera that I ever saw. Like Yes, and it was so magical. And I'm a sucker for like fairy tales. I'm a sucker for it all. Like I love the magic. I love the
The
costume,
drama.
the drama. I'm like, this is, yes, do more of this. And he was so awesome. Like it was my first opera, and I'm like, I don't know if it was the direct, like a accurate representation of typical opera, because he was a dancer in the opera, and I noticed that a lot of people seemed so like excited about like his dancing and everything, and I don't know, I loved it. I'm obsessed with it.
Feels like that space that invites all of the artists. And so, coming into the opera space, especially as a Black person, I was like, oh man, like there's so many stories that can be told that we have not through this medium, that will be told in a really dynamic and powerful way. Because I think about Tosca, and then I think about the Queen of Sheba, and I'm like, you know what I mean? Like an opera about the Queen of Sheba, or an opera about, these powerful, mythical Black Africanist characters, both real and of our imagination. And what would that look like on stage? So I'm like, man, I want to do, like bring me in, I'll direct it, I'll write it, I'll think about it.
I didn't grow up with opera. I grew up in a musical family, but a very like folk music at church, kind of music. And so I studied dance as a child and did ballet all the way up through high school, musical theater, that sort of thing. And then when I got to college and someone introduced me to opera, I was very, I was way cooler than opera at the time. I was not going to get involved with that. But then exactly like what you said, I discovered that it is every art form all together on the stage at the same time. And not just the ones you mentioned, dance, storytelling, music, but fashion and art and
Design, set design, production.
everything. If there's an art, poetry, if there's an art, it can be involved in opera. And then what you said about innovation, you're totally right. Opera in the 21st century is just about to explode with innovation, because now we have all these new art forms. We have projections, and we have all these different
The whole digital space,
all the digital things, and the virtual reality operas are being written right now, and it is the perfect vehicle to tell these fantastic, fabulous, otherworldly, grand stories.
So as a storyteller, it feels important for me to tell what resonates with me. If I'm given a project and someone saying, hey, what can you do with this? Or what do you feel about this? If I'm presented with something as a storyteller, my initial thought is, can I tell this story? Do I have connection to the subject matter? Am I the right voice, or do I have the right skill set to steward this work and bring it from the ether into the earth realm to be able to share it? So those are the kinds of interrogating questions that I consider within myself. And then because Camry and I work so close together, I'm always looking to her to say, well, what do you think about it? Like, do you like it? What do you feel? What are you seeing? And when we watched it, literally we finished watching it and she started like with ideas. She's like, oh, maybe this. And then I was like, okay, I wasn't really saying all of that, but that's interesting. I feel like my initial response in all truth was like, man, I don't know if this story, if I'm the person to tell this story centering, if we are even the people to shepherd this story in a way that will serve it. But basically what then began to speak to me, especially as she began to share different ideas about who this woman is and what her state is and where she exists, like where we're finding her in life, this character, those things started to resonate with me. And really it became about how can we humanize this woman? Because this is a subject matter, the subject matter that's being shared can feel redundant. It can feel like things we've heard a million times, like, oh my God, not another sad song. But what Roberta and Susan did so beautifully is they left so much space for interpretation. They left so much space for, even in the writing of it, because it's episodic and it's like a montage of scenes, kind of stacked on top of each other. Like you mentioned, it's not this linear narrative arc. There's so much room for play, especially if you're thinking from a film, a cinematic, a screenplay lens, where you have all of this freedom to explore. So again, for us, it felt like an opportunity to lean into these uncomfortable conversations and maybe flip it back to the audience and ask questions and play into the irony of it. Like, yes, you've heard this story before, but what about it? How are you implicated? What does it make you feel? Do you see this woman? Can you connect to her? Is this just another sad song, or is this a woman that we can humanize in such a way that that as a mother, mothers can connect with her no matter their race, creed, or code? As someone who's potentially grieving, can we all feel grief in a world of COVID? Like, we've all been grieving, so all these things begin to be entry points for us, I think, to lean into.
For me, it was almost kind of opposite, because it was like, well, I want to tell this. Who's going to tell this story?
If we don't,
if we don't tell the story, we need to tell the story and give it some sort of give it justice. I feel like, we have the right person, like Karen, she's great. And I think that automatically I went into thinking like, yes, Karen's great. Now we need to bring in like a dream team. Everyone needs to be great and really do this project justice. And I think that everyone that we brought on was somehow attached to it in some way, because we've heard those stories so many times already. And it's like, heck yeah, like, let's tell the story from our point of view, because I feel like we hear these stories, but we hear them on CNN or we hear them on Fox News, and it's like, there's such a detachment from that story, versus me being a Black woman myself. I've heard the story. I've been frightened, if Doobie goes to like pick up some M&Ms, because I don't know, I was maybe pregnant once and it was super late, goes to pick up some M&Ms and wonder, if he's just going to be like good to come back home. And that's something that goes on through, I'm assuming any woman's life who's married to a Black man or a person of color. So I think that it resonated with me because I wanted to make sure that she was being presented well. Because I don't know. Like, I think that some stories like this that are told that have a tragic ending, they seem to be, I don't know, the person who lost that loved one, I don't know if they're presented well in media.
As you were talking, I remembered something else you wrote that's in our synopsis. The audience the viewer is left to wonder, is this real? Oh, I see who wrote it. I was using the collective.
No. Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Is this real? But then the next question is, does it matter in this moment if it's real? Because it's representative of who she is and the world that she deserves to be in.
Yeah.
And dwell in.
That others get to live in.
Yes.
The other thing is that it's not a world that doesn't exist.
Right.
It just doesn't exist for the Black person. And that's the thing, that's the irony of it all. It's like, is she asking for too much? or is she asking for just enough? Or like, because what she's asking for or what she wants for her child is
Right.
reasonable, you know, and it's what other children get to experience, other children being white children. So it's like, why not this for my child? I would say it's less about what it meant for me and more about what it means for the character and the story we wanted to tell. Because again, as we approached the piece, it was really starting off by asking, what is this? By being curious, allowing ourselves to be curious about what is this piece asking for? Who is this woman? What are the different states that she's in? How does she occupy space? What does she dream like? What does she imagine herself to be? Who is she when she is at her worst? Who is she when she's at her height? You know, so these kinds of questions. And that for us were the leading questions. And then it was about how then do we show that without having to say it? You know what I mean? Because she has these super tender moments of, and you spoke to this, Carolyn, about how media portrays the person who got shot. You know, it's like, or who was killed or arrested or whatever. It's like, oh, by the way, they were convicted of carrying drugs 17 times or whatever the thing is. Like, they find all the dirt, and we find this woman singing over her child saying, my beautiful brown boy. Like, we find her in that tenderness. And so it was about, how do we see the magic of that? Like, how do we express and show that heightened, tender, profound, intergalactic love that is outside of time and space and trauma and trial? It's like, yes, we live in all of this brokenness, but love transcends us. So then how do we allow this woman to look that as she's singing that, and then allow audience to feel that? And so the glam glitch is really about that. It's about her glory. It's about her glitch. You know, it's like, it's about the tension of wanting to love that child well, wanting them to experience freedom, and knowing by giving them that car for their 16th birthday, you're probably setting them up to die. The glitch of that, the actual tension of, can I love you? How do I love this child? Like, how do I love a child well in this world, you know? And the tension of that, you know? And that's just the state of, yeah.
Yeah, knowing, not just in an abstract, but knowing in your bones, because you've experienced it yourself, what you're sending your child out into the world. Well, congratulations to both of you on everything, especially on this work. And I just can't wait to see it and get it out there.
Thank you. Thank you, UrbanArias. Thank you for the support, the space, the creative freedom. You, Paul, cannot be underemphasized. How you've shepherded, stewarded, made space for us to create, and create in truth and create authentically. So thank you.
Well, we didn't talk about how different film is from opera. That's a whole other thing. I think we both had a lot of days where we were like, what language are we speaking?
Yeah.
I thought I knew how to do this. And we've all learned. It's been amazing, and hopefully we can all take these skills into our next projects and do more amazing things.
Absolutely.
So, thank you both.
Thank you.
It doesn't live up to its promises. Its promises.
Here at UrbanArias, we pride ourselves on timely and relevant opera. That's why.